Hey guys, how you doing? I just want to touch base with you guys and walk you through uh, some of the parts in my lifetime that I think are really important for you to know. Um, and I'll explain the reason why of that later. But before I was born, my mom and dad were married. They had my brother, and he's about a year and a half older than me. And my dad found out that my mom was pregnant again, and he decided to leave. And they weren't in the best place at the time, but he left. And so when I was born, he wasn't around. They ended up getting a divorce, and my dad took my brother, and I stayed with my mom. My dad's mom was a great lady. Her and her husband, my grandpa, were awesome. I didn't know him, not for a long time, but they were really great. And eventually my brother ended up living with them. I lived with my mom, and honestly, my mother was a drug addict, and we lived a really, really tough life. We lived with a lot of drugs around, times where she was, almost hallucinating, would wake me up in the middle of the night, even when I was, 6 years old, telling me how my grandmother was going to die, and that's what drugs do to you. I mean, they just really screw you up, right, mentally. And so, as I was growing up, it was a very difficult time. We lived with bikers at times. We lived on the streets for a short amount of time, very short. We lived in a car. I think it was less than a week, but I mean, it was still impactful for me. The people that we hung around or were around, I didn't have a choice, but the people we were around were not good. They weren't good people. There was a lot of drugs going around, a lot of bad stuff going on. My mom was really deep into it and struggling with that. At one point, we lived in West San Diego, right off of 30, I think it was 35th and University. Really bad place. And I remember one night waking up at I don't know, maybe 11 o'clock at night, and I still remember this vividly. I could see the old school style of stereo with a big dial and a blue bar across with all the channels, and music was playing. It was old rock or classic rock, and I could see it, and that was the only thing on in the house, and I was all by myself, and I was looking around. I couldn't find my mom, so I go outside, and I'm screaming and crying for my mom, and the manager who would watch me sometimes called me and told me to come up to her house. She just came outside and told me to come up, so I went up there and was sleeping in her boy's room, and next thing you know, we hear a guy yelling at her, and he's got a gun pointed at her head, saying how he's going to kill her. And he ends up jumping out of the window, and from what I heard later was he broke his leg, got away from the police still. I mean, he was definitely on some hard drugs. It was a really rough area at the time. But my mom, being on drugs and stuff, just thought it was okay and took off and went and did her own thing and would come back in the morning. So, so these kind of things would go on. I wouldn't see my dad until 6th grade. So for a long time, like 8 years old, I would get myself up and I would go to school by myself. I'd make whatever food we had and just kind of take it with me to school, and literally I'd walk, I don't know, mile and a half to school by myself, get myself there, get myself home. My mom wasn't coming and picking me up or seeing me. It wasn't like that at all. I was very lonely, and there was times it was so bad that at one point the principal went and took me and bought me shoes because my shoes were so bad. At one point I had lice so bad, literally you could see it crawling around my head. They were so bad, they had to shave my head. There were Christmases, half the time I'd wake up in the morning and be by myself because my mom was still asleep or my stepdad was asleep and wouldn't get up. And so either I was opening up gifts by myself, or my grandparents would come over and open gifts with me, So there were some rough times there. We lived in some pretty crappy places and pretty dangerous places, and it was brutal. It was brutal. I mean, there was a lot of times I asked myself, why am I alive? What do I have to live like this for? What did I do? All these things, just blame anything and everything, everyone that I possibly could. Finally, one day, I can't remember. I think it was 9 or 10, somewhere in that range. And I come home from school. My mom's not home all night long. She doesn't come home. Come home from school the next day. She's still not home. 2 days now. All of a sudden, it's 3-4 days. And I'm sitting on the back porch with my mom's music box, and I'm just listening, and I'm crying because I can't. I'm wondering where my mom's at. And that feeling of someone just leaving you is extremely intense and really plays huge mind trips with your head. I mean, it's brutal. And so I knew of one place that she would hang out at, and I went down there. It was a bar, and I knocked on the door, and they opened the door up. I remember this vividly. And I asked for my mom, and they went back in, and she wouldn't come see me. And so she was there, but she couldn't see me. She just was obviously embarrassed and afraid and didn't want to talk to me. And so I left, went back home. My stepdad at the time said, well, if she ain't coming home, I'm going to take you to your grandma's house because I can't take care of you like this. And so I ended up living with my grandma for just a few weeks. Then I moved with my aunt for maybe a few months. It was about more like 6 months. I went in. That was my 6th grade year, and finally my dad all of a sudden showed up. I hadn't seen him. I can't remember if I've ever seen him before that time. But my dad showed up and said he was going to take me home with him, and I was going to live with him. So I was super stoked. I was super excited. My dad finally wanted to be with me, and so I go live with him, and he's married and has 2 kids, and I'm living with them and going to school. Well, my stepmom, it was really big about school, and she pushed me really hard, and I wasn't good at school at the time. I'd struggled, I had a lot of learning disabilities and at that time, and one time she told me she was going to take the kids to go shopping, and if I had to stay home and do some math problems, and if I got them right, then we'd all go to the movies together. Well, 3 hours later, she comes home and tells me that they just decided to go to the movies because they knew I'd get them wrong. And she checked them over. They were wrong. And I got really upset because I just couldn't believe that she did that. I didn't understand why. And she got mad at me and kind of smacked me a few times in the back of the head and my back. And I just finally told my dad, I'm done. And decided to go to the foster system I think at that time I was 12 years old. And I decided, I'm done. So he packed my stuff, took me over to a foster home in Santee, my first place, dropped me off, drove away. Went into this house, people I don't know. Didn't know what to expect, what was going to happen. And, for the most part, they were an elderly couple. They were okay, but the kids that lived there weren't. And we had a lot of issues. And the grandfather was a drinker, a real drinker, so that was an issue. But they didn't do anything to us. I just thought, wasn't a good call. Ended up getting placed into a foster home in La Mesa where they were selling speed and weed. And by 13, I was already doing speed and weed with them. They got me a bong for my birthday. And so that was for over a year. And I think my social worker came and saw me once there. So definitely we had a lot of troubles there. Her older son came down and smacked me so hard, threw me right into a dresser, broke the dresser. He was 24, mind you, and at the time I think I was 14, 15, in that range, maybe 14. But when I was in Santee, in the first foster home, I had met a guy named Mike and his family and became friends with him and stuff. And so when I was up in Mesa, I called him and just kind of asked for help. And his parents decided they would become foster parents to me and only me, and they did. And so I moved back down to Santee and lived with them and went the rest of the way through high school. I didn't graduate. I quit in the middle of my senior year. I wasn't going to graduate in the first place, and I was just so disenchanted with everything. I decided to get out of it and go do different things, and that's regrettable, but it's kind of where I was in my life. So, lived with them. Still a lot of drugs going on, a lot of stuff going on that shouldn't have happened. Just drug-wise and partying and things. I was way too young for that kind of crap, and it was bad. And so, took off for a while, went to a thing called the California Conservation Corps. Did that for a little while, but just didn't like it. And so I decided to go back home, stay there for a while. At 18 years old, I met my wife, and I literally knew her for one night and talked to her the next day, and we became boyfriend and girlfriend, and we've been together now 27 years, and we've been married 22 years, almost 23. June will be 23 years. So she's been a huge blessing in my life. She has really helped turn me around. Had to deal with a lot of crap. I had a lot of emotional issues, a lot of anger issues. There's a lot of stuff that I'm not telling you. I just feel like it'd go too far. Too uncomfortable for me to talk about, but I can tell you that a lot of stuff that happened in my lifetime I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. But I will also say this, and this is for me personally, my faith, not anyone else's, my faith. I believe the Lord brought me through some major things, and I was in a place where I really just didn't care what was going to happen to me, and the anger was so great and tremendous, in me. I was so bitter from what happened that I just didn't really care. But He gave me my wife, and my wife is a rock, and she's strong, and she could handle me, and she dealt with it, and she dealt with a lot of stuff, and it wasn't fair to her for sure. A lot of stupid stuff that I did, she had to live through. And so, and that's for me tough, because I took it out on her many times. Never hit her, but I definitely at times, when I was younger, I was definitely verbally abusive at times, and because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to cope with my anger at the time. I didn't know how to communicate at the time. But God has changed a lot in me, and He's done some just great things. My temper is nowhere near like it used to be. I get angry sometimes, but nothing like I used to. The relationship with my wife is amazing. She's my best friend. She's my rock. I'm her rock. We support each other 100% in whatever we do, and that's why it's worked so well. I've come a long ways. I have a son. I have a beautiful grandbaby, a beautiful daughter-in-law. But here's a really cool thing. I never stopped loving my mom, ever. And me and my wife went down and stayed with her for a month in the desert. She lived in Akatia, and we went and stayed with her and her boyfriend at the time, and she was still on drugs and stuff, but we stayed. I just missed her and wanted to see her, and we stayed there for a month during the summer. It was hot as heck. It's brutal, but just got to see her, hung out, come back home. Maybe a few months later, next thing I know, she's moved back here, and she's living with my grandmother and my grandfather, and she decides to start helping them. Well, as she's helping them, she starts going to church with me and my wife, and going to church with my brother and his at the time his wife, and that goes for a little while, and then all of a sudden she starts going to my church, and she accepts God in her life. And to sit there and watch her stand up and accept the Lord after what she had went through, what I had went through, thinking I probably would never even see her again, or would she live, would she survive what she was going through, to see her stand up and accept God in her life, and then to see the change in her was unbelievable. It was absolutely unbelievable. And so, I was on cloud 9, and there was still a lot of stuff I had to work through. a lot of resentment, anger, at times hatred, and so it took a long time before I would even allow her to really, hug me or give me a kiss. Yeah, it was I love you, that kind of thing, but I never really let her closely into me or with me, and I was very guarded with her for a long time, and finally I just said, you know what, Mom, I forgive you, I love you. And and it still has taken a long time to get past it and to be close with her, and I am now. But she's lived with me and my wife for the last probably, I don't know, 12 years or so, somewhere around there. So it's come full circle. I love my mother. She's awesome. She's great with the grandchildren. And it's just a blessing to see her and be with her, and for all the times that we missed with each other, obviously. So that's what I was talking to you about in the other video, where I was talking about, being able to move past tough things in your life. If you don't, you're going to stay angry, and you're going to have a lot of pain and hatred in you, and that's going to suck the life out of you. You're just not going to be able to enjoy life, because it's always going to be right here in your head, and finding a way through that is just critical. It's critical to your joy, to the success in your life, to family, to relationships. There's so many things that are tied to that, and so I feel like I could talk to that because of what I've went through. I don't sit there and dwell on any of that stuff anymore. Really, I look at it now and say, you know what, I went through some tough stuff, but I get to share that with other people, and I get to support them and help them through times when they're going through something like that, because I've been there and done that. And so, it's just important for me. It was important to me to tell you guys this. It was important to me so that you knew exactly who I am, the struggles I've been through. And really, I look at this weight loss, it's like such a big deal in my life because of so many things I never stuck with in my life. For me to be able to stick with it for almost a year now, and to see the change that's happened, I praise the Lord for that. I thank my wife for her support. She's been just amazing. My mom, everyone at work has been awesome. They've all been huge supporters of me. People at church, everyone at CrossFit Darkside has been just rock stars. I mean, just super cool and very helpful. So to see where I've came from and where I am now has been absolutely amazing, and it makes that change in my life so much bigger because of where I was and what I've gone through to get where I am today. And so that's why I'm doing these videos for you guys, because I want to support you guys. I want to lift people up. I want to see people successful. I want to see them change that mindset of I can't to I can, and I will. And so if I can have any kind of effect on anyone out there for that, I'm in, and I'm in to help and support you and get to watch your successes happen and different little victories and things. And it doesn't matter how small they are. I don't want you thinking, oh, it's just this little thing. No, every single victory you make is big, and so I want you to see that. So anyways, guys, not sure how long this has been going on, but I want you guys to know I love you guys. I appreciate you guys, and I told you I was going to be transparent, and this is who I am. I'm the same way off camera, and hope you guys have an awesome night. I will touch base with you guys later. Most likely this will be the end of this video, so just thank you so much for watching this if you were able to watch it, and I'd really appreciate it if you would obviously like, subscribe, or comment below. I'd love to get see comments from you guys and kind of talk things out. I'm here for you for sure. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you have an awesome night, and I will see you on the next one.